knew that Web3 had really bad tools. I mean, in our opinion, we did not think the tool sets were very impressive. We thought they were very developer focused. They were overly difficult to use.
Welcome back to another episode of Coordinated. I think today is the 16th or 17th episode we are recording, and you guys have seen pretty cracked AVSs which are coming from like co-processors, data availability, interop, AI. I think we're covering a bunch of AI products lately because of all this AI narrative and the vision of Eigenlayer is verifiable AI. But today we have a very different kind of protocol. I think many guys will kind of, if you have a mental model for this, you will compare with somewhat like Zapier or something which does automation for you. At least this is what I'm thinking. So, right, there are many complex workflows in the software industry. You need to like code with all this if statements and for loops and everything. But hey, there is this tool. I think many of you, like being devs, have heard this, like Zapier, which allows you to create these workflows using drag and drop. And we have someone today who is the co-founder of a somewhat similar protocol. They are one of the like very key Eigenlayer and very unique Eigenlayer AVSs, having like 2 billion plus real estate capital, with securing their protocol or AVS with 25 plus operators running the network. We'd like to welcome William from K3 Labs to our show. Hey, hi William, thanks for joining in.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate the opportunity.
Awesome. I think tried giving the short intro of what K3 and you are trying to do. Like we like to know more about from you what K3 Labs is. But like before that, want to know a little bit about you, like your personal journey, like what you're doing before Web3 and what piqued your interest to like delve into this like software automations in Web3 ecosystem, and eventually which led to the like founding of K3 Labs.
Yeah, it's, thank you. So basically, like many people, I think in that are a little bit older that are in Web3, a lot of us started in traditional finance and traditional fintech. So I've been working in fintech for a couple decades. Working with, I live in New York City. I've been working with the big banks here in New York and traveling to London and San Francisco and all the big cities, working with fintech for quite some time. And then in 2017 or 2018-ish, a lot of that was kind of drying up. It wasn't, I guess, got the impression that it was a little stale. I was a little bored having done that for as long as I had. There's only so many ways you can build a new little tool to try to find alpha in stocks or do all the little things that you do in fintech, right? I was just really excited about what the next world of fintech was going to look like. And I saw blockchain and crypto as that, right? That's what a lot of us do. A lot of us get excited about, this is probably going to be big. Obviously, really, it was just Bitcoin at the time. But it was, I just thought I want to learn what that is before it's too late. I want to be somebody who knows what that is before it's too late. And so I started learning then, and I've been in the space ever since. I was very fortunate in my career to be an executive at multiple companies that had successful exits as an entrepreneur or as an exec in small companies. And the largest company that I was involved with was in the crypto space. So we were a company called Curve. It was the first multi-party computational wallet technology, and we sold that company to PayPal in 2021. So one of the exits on my resume includes a Web3 exit, including some of the Web2 stuff that I did before. So really love what we're doing, particularly the serious things that we're doing in Web3, and I've really enjoyed my journey here since, and really excited about what we're doing at K3 as well. But I'll let you ask any other questions before I jump straight into K3.
Yeah, I think you raised, like, just shared one very important information is you have worked with traditional fintechs, and you must have networks and connections with like lots of people who are working in the fintech, like as of now. we're seeing lots of pro crypto things post Trump, which came, and in general, there is a wider adoption of crypto in all this. At least like the big person in the fintechs are talking about, okay, let's say Stripe, they have a crypto integration. PayPal also has this their own stable coins and others. What's your like inner circle, or what's your knowledge base is like it's telling, or like the information you have which you can share, that how fintechs are seeing crypto? Is it really in that verge of adoption, or are we still in a very small circle catering to each other?
So I think the most people in Web3 have been wrong about what's happening in the Web2 space for a while, and I think they've been frustrated because they think it's been slow adoption, and they think it's been, and they're concerned because the tools that they're building aren't being adopted. But actually, the reality is that these large companies have adopted this for right away. So the adoption's already been there. They've just been doing the maximum that they can do under U.S. law. Generally speaking, I'm just speaking. Of course, my expertise is just London, and New York. So under British law and under New York law, the companies, they love. Generally speaking, there's a lot of positive feelings about crypto in the Web2 space. They are happy to work with it. They're happy to learn. Most of these companies are literally spending millions of dollars on large teams of people that are doing POCs, trying out new things, thinking about how they want to work with it. So it's wrong to say they're not adopting it. What they're doing, though, is they've just been going up to the maximum that they can do without getting in trouble, which is, of course, reasonable. They have other businesses that they can't put at risk. If you have a multi-billion-dollar business, you're not going to put that at risk by trying to break the rules on one of your side projects. So now that if the rules in fact do change, and it's a big if, we don't know exactly what'll happen, right? But if the rules do get better, and if it gets to be more open, then I think you'll quickly see the work that these companies have been doing. They have been doing the work. They do have the projects. And I will say that I've got several of them playing with K3 Labs, and the feedback is really positive. So if you really want to get their attention, you also have to build the kinds of tools that they want. You can't just build the kinds of tools that make sense. And so that is one of the big problems we have in Web3, is that we very much think about ourselves and what we want, and we don't always take the time and energy to think about what a broader audience needs it to be. So that's what we're really proud of at K3, is that this drag and drop configure type tool set is the way that most developers in the world think about doing the work. I mean, obviously in the Solidity community, we don't necessarily do that way, but we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm there too.
Yeah, I think like before coming to K3, I have one question for you again from that Web3 Web2 background. That is, what do you think about meme coins as an adoption to the Web2 market? Is it something they consider, or is it just a bonker thing with?
I think there's different opinions about that. If you catch me on a good day, I will laugh, and I will tell you I think meme coins are fun, and I get that people are enjoying it, and it's okay to have fun. Not everything has to be serious business, right? I don't think anybody thinks meme coins is serious business, but it is. They obviously can make some money, and they're fun, and it's like buying a lottery ticket. And there's nothing, most countries have lotteries. It's not like this. It's crazy to suggest that these things are way out there. But if you catch me on a bad day, I might get frustrated by it, because there is more important work, I think, personally, to do. And I do think that it can often take too much of our energy and too much of our oxygen. But that's okay. There's a place for everything. There's a place for everything. I don't know how the big companies think about meme coins. I suspect that it makes them a little nervous. Because it makes them think that if the whole world thinks of these things as being silly, then when they want to launch let's say when Starbucks wants to launch basically some sort of loyalty token, which makes sense. They already have a loyalty program, right? You're already accruing points on your Starbucks cards or whatever else in your Starbucks accounts. If they decide that they want to tokenize that in some capacity, they would be they might be concerned if people think of tokens as memes and jokes. So I can't speak for them. I have no idea how they really feel about them, of course.
I think I have a similar experience with airdrops or like farming airdrops. On a good day, if you say, ki, hey, is it farming airdrops is good? Like just now the Bera airdrop happened and many people have gone good allocation. Like just by using the protocol and doing some random stuff and all. Like if you ask me on a good day, hey, how airdrops farming is, I'm like, okay, fine, it's good. But on a bad day, as you mentioned, if somebody asks, I'm like, no, guys, there are much better jobs to do than farming this and like having a actual L2 where it solves the problem and everything.
Well, so it's a good example. You can build a farming automation with K3. Like you can absolutely monitor different smart contracts, look for drops, do things, look for different yields, and build even trading swaps directly in K3 Labs. And I had somebody who wanted to do that, and I was playing around with it. I was trying to help them, and I took it offline, and I was trying to make it work. And then I realized at some point I spent like 3 or 4 hours on it, and it was great, and it was cool to do what they wanted. It's nice to know the tool can do that, right? But then at the end of the time, I was like, wait a second, this is 3 or 4 hours I could have spent building something a lot more interesting. And mind you, now that I know how to do it, I could do it in 10 minutes. It's just, most of that was me learning how those things work, because I don't actually know how all those things work. Now that I know where all the pool data is and how to find the data and how to do it, I could easily build it on the K3 side in just a few minutes. But nonetheless, it's a rabbit hole. You can get stuck in it, as we say, and next thing you know, a day has gone by and you're like, well, this is a day I didn't, learning about all these different things. Was maybe not the best use of my time. But anyhow, long story short, it is a thing. People enjoy it. I'm proud that our tool can support that activity if you want to do it. I'm also proud that our tool can support perhaps what people would consider more serious workflows as well.
Yeah, I think that opened the floodgate for the key three things which is going to discuss at this moment. Before the application part, want to know from you, like, what is K3? If you define in like under 1 minute or 2 minutes, or you can take your time, like to define what K3 is actually.
So, first of all, the reason why it's called K3 is originally we were thinking that we knew that Web3 had really bad tools. I mean, in our opinion, we did not think the tool sets were very impressive. We thought they were very developer focused. They were overly difficult to use. And so the first idea we had was we needed a Kubernetes style experience for making things easier and better in Web3. So the K originally kind of came from the idea of a Kubernetes. And for anyone who's listening who knows what Kubernetes is, it's really just kind of like a hosting environment with some cool tool sets and some other things that make it easier to build. We have since taken that a lot further. So what this is now, like you said, more like a Zapier or an audio type tool. But that's where we came. We started the journey thinking without better tools, we will never really see a much bigger audience. Like we always talk, you go to conferences and people say, oh, the whole world is going to do this and everybody's going to do this and we're all going to have this on our phones. And the answer that I keep shaking my head at is not with better tools. You're not. Not without better tools. Like there's no way. When the internet first started, it only took 2 or 3 years for there to be really simple and easy to use tools. The massive companies came out of from nothing, got started and built incredibly easy tools to make the internet more accessible, make it easier to publish content, made it easier to do all of these amazing things, right? That same revolution has not happened in Web3. And it's a really interesting question. Why? Why are we not doing that? And I have my own feelings, and I think a lot of it is because we have a completely different focus. Like we're focused on trying to basically get tokens out to market and get adoption of tokens rather than actually getting more users. Like getting more users doesn't actually pay the bills in Web3 the way it does in Web2. So in Web2, you need to pay the bills. In order to pay the bills, you need more users. And in order to need more users, you build better usability. Like this is just a basic, obvious, honest thing. We don't actually need tons more users to still have successful Web3 projects as long as you get the right users. And so we're not doing it as an industry. We're not paying as much attention to usability as we should. And if we don't do that, we will always just be a small thing. We will always just be a little meme coin factory or whatever else. If we do not build better tools, we will not be bigger and better and broader. And so we're really excited to be part of that solution. And hopefully there's lots of other companies that come after us, even if they do it the same kinds of things. We'll be proud to be part of that revolution, because without better tools, it's just not going to happen.
Awesome. You just picked up the best problem statements, which I'll say the tech ecosystem is going, and Eigenlayer is a part of it, for not being customer focused or user focused. As you said, most products are okay, have a token, get out of like raise VC money, have a token for whatever reason, sell it, have the TG. I think most projects, the game is over. Like till the game is still there. It's over. Like nobody uses an L2, nobody uses a protocol or a DEX which has a token and everything. The thing you pointed, for us to have real adoption beyond meme coins, we need better tooling to develop something which kind of makes our time worth it, or like actually do things using this permissionless stack which we now have. Uh, like bridging on that, one thing you mentioned when we are discussing about other stuffs beyond K3, airdrop farming is like, it's not a good utilization of time for most. I also think the similar, but I can't negate the fact that airdrops pay you well if you use or farm a protocol properly. On that note, want to know use cases of K3 straight away. Then we can obviously jump on the tech and all those things. If you can share like a few use cases which are not so which are casual, like airdrop hunting, and then obviously some real business workflows which if somebody can use K3 to build actual products.
Yeah. So look, at its heart, it is a workflow tool where you basically can decide step 1, step 2, step 3. I want to start with one thing, and then I want the system to do a second thing, and then I want it to do a third thing. You basically just build a workflow, just like you would in a tool like Zapier. Those workflows can be started by scheduled triggers, meaning I want something to run every day or every hour or every 2 minutes or every 30 seconds. You can start a process to work based on a clock, or you can start a process to work based on an on-chain trigger. So like something happens in a wallet or something happens on a smart contract. So as an example of your airdrop use case, you can be monitoring a specific wallet for an airdrop, right? You can be, if you've got your wallets, you're expecting, you can basically monitor the wallet every single time there's an activity in a wallet. That will start a trigger start a workflow in our system. Or you can be monitoring a specific smart contract for yield data, right? Every time there's a change to the smart contract, you can look up and see what the new yield data is. You can pull that yield data into your formula. You can do that. You could listen to 10 different smart contracts and pull the yield data from 10 different places and then compare them and see which is higher. And then you can execute an activity based on which is higher. You can evaluate, right? So you can basically just build an actual logical step process. And so you have these building blocks. You can just drag in more and more building blocks. On the left side of our screen, we have all the different building blocks. You can read data from smart contracts. You can read data from internal APIs. You can read data from market data from oracles. You can take all of that and you can do transform functions and compare them. And again, you can find out which is bigger or smaller, whatever else. And then you also have the ability to do something with that data. You can send that data to yourself just as an alert through Telegram or Slack or email, or you can actually take that data and put it into trades. You can actually execute automated trading on Uniswap or token-to-token transfers, or to make deposits directly from your wallet into those smart contracts, onto those protocols. So or you can write data to an internal API, or you can write data to another smart contract that you own, right? So you have the ability really to just to consume data from a variety of sources, do whatever math and logic you want, put in if statements, if this is this, and if something is bigger than this, or if the Bitcoin price goes below $100,000, then every time it dips below $100,000, buy another 0.002 Bitcoin or whatever. You can build limit orders. You can build that logic into your workflow, and then you can execute whatever you want. Again, trades, alerts. You could write into your own database, whatever information you want to. So if you can do all of those things, sometimes the question is tricky. It's like, well, it's too much. So how do you build something for specific people? So we already mentioned how you could do an airdrop farming. You can easily build a workflow that, again, is looking for all the different yields and is finding the best yields, is noticing when airdrops come in, and then is executing and auto trading them. We also are integrated with Coinbase. So for those of users who prefer Coinbase rather than a DEX, they can do the trade on Coinbase as well. But there's also real world applications for this too. So if you're a real business and you want to be posting your data to a blockchain, and there's a lot of people that are trying to do that, right? There's a lot of companies out there that they want to be more transparent. They want to put some of their data on a blockchain. Maybe it's their carbon footprint data. Maybe it is their total value of their portfolios, which is kind of public data in Europe and in the US anyhow. They want to be more transparent. They just need a simple thing, a simple formula that goes and takes the data from their database every night and writes it to the blockchain. And that might seem really crazy easy, and all of your listeners might be, wow, why on earth can't they just do that? That's not that hard. And the answer is, well, they have a lot of regulatory and jurisdictional issues they have to deal with. First of all, they would have to hire all the right people who know how to do that, and that's a very specific talent set. Secondly, they would have to probably hold crypto in order to pay gas fees, right? They would have to know where they want to publish it. They'd have to make a decision. They'd have to do research. Oh, should we be using Arbitrum? Should we be using Optimism? They'd have to spend all the time and energy to do that. Then they would have to test it. They'd have to have a wallet. So they'd have to have a security team that would have to know how to handle the wallet. They'd have to be able to figure out how to transfer their fiat into that other currency. So they have to have an exchange account somewhere. Like, for us, all that sounds totally normal, right? Of course, that's how crypto works. That is a threshold that is way too high. It's ridiculously high. And so this is when people say, why isn't adoption faster? Well, you're not building them a tool to make that easy. K3 does that exactly. It takes you less than 10 seconds to build that. You don't have to worry about gas. You don't have to acquire crypto. You can choose whatever blockchain you want. If you don't like the blockchain you're using today, it's a drop-down list. You change a different blockchain and you can write to a different blockchain tomorrow. You don't have to do any research. You don't have to figure out how to acquire the fiat. You don't have to figure out how to transfer anything, translate anything. You don't have to figure out how to actually write. You don't need to hire a developer even, really. I mean, a developer is most likely your user, but they don't have to have a very specific user set, right? You can literally just set up an automation and have it run, and you can get it without thinking too much about it, and you could be up and running in less than a minute, right? So these are the kinds of tools that those companies need to do even very basic operations, the kinds of things that they want to do. And trust me, they want to do that. I have been talking to enterprise blockchain customers for the last 7 or 8 years since I've been in this business. Banks, everyone's they do want to use these things, but they have to be usable. They cannot have to build everything from scratch. It's just not their mentality to make that kind of investment. It doesn't make sense for them.
One thing you raised among all this is you might not need a developer in the pipeline. So how you are envisioning, let's say, how I fundamentally understand software, correct me if I'm wrong, that software is mostly for automating things. That's one of the key primary goals of software in general. And K3 does exactly the same for the web3 industry, right? Now, if somebody wants to implement, let's say a startup, I have an idea. I have an idea to create a airdrop farm, like an airdrop automation tool basically, and I don't have the hard coding knowledge where I will have a Node.js knowledge or Solidity or all those stuff. Like, how can K3 help me to go in my 0 to 1 journey?
Well, you can absolutely. So you don't have to be super technical to set that up in K3. You basically will go in, you'll decide how often you want a process to run, or if you want to listen to a specific yield on every time there's a change. I will say though, that you have to, in that particular use case that you talked about, yield farming, or you do have to know the addresses of the smart contracts that you want to be farming, right? So right away, that's not exactly, something my grandmother is going to do. And so I'm not suggesting that it's you can absolutely do this with no knowledge whatsoever. But you could take data from your own database, and you could post that to a blockchain without being very technical, because if you have access to the data from your own database, then you could push it out. I mean, again, almost all of our users have some small amount of technical understanding, and it's just that they don't have to have that special expertise on exactly how Solidity works, or exactly how wallet signing works, and exactly how to commit transactions, because that stuff's hard, right? That's the hard part of blockchain: signing transactions, posting data, posting functions, managing a wallet. You don't have to do those things. But the reality in Web3 is, yes, people have to know what smart contracts they want to interact with. They probably have to have a certain amount of knowledge as to what a smart contract is, and where to go find it, and how to go grab its address. But if you know the addresses of the smart contracts that you want to monitor, you, without being technical, can come in, paste those smart contract addresses into the tool, and you can see the data in real time. It'll pull the data out in real time. You can see it on the screen. You can see which of the data points it is that you want to specifically be monitoring. You can choose, I want to be monitoring yield, and then it'll come up as a number. And then you can say, and now if this number goes above, that's a very simple, you're just filling out web forms. You're not actually writing any code, and are you ever directly interacting with that code when you're using the system.
One analogy I want to ask, Shriram also told us in a Roll-Up podcast that in a future there will be one like chat GPT like interface. Let's say it's AVS GPT if I name it. If I go on, or whatever GPT, right? Web3 GPT, if I go and say, hey, can you help me to farm the top 10 yield protocols? I have a risk factor of, let's say, I can only tolerate risk of certain percentage, and I am looking for a gain of 15%. Want to know, like, is it possible at this moment, or has K3 has similar ambitions like towards that down the line?
Yeah, 100%. So right now you do that with using logical building blocks, right? So now, and we have ambitions, and we have been playing with how we could use different AI tools. We've tried a couple different ones where we could use basic language and convert those into workflows, right? Because that's really what you're talking about. I personally still believe that you're going to want to see the workflow that comes out of it to trust it. Meaning, I think if you just typed, I want to do this, and this, and this, and said go, and then it started working, you'd be like, oh, I hope it's working the way I want it to. I still think it's better interface to be able to type like what you're saying, I want to do this, this, and this, and then actually see the result as a workflow, and then you can double check. Oh yes, that's exactly what I wanted. Great. Right. So I like the combination of what our user interface already is, and then combining that with natural language. And so we are working on exactly that. I completely agree. The one thing I wanted to mention, because obviously this is the Eigenlayer community we're talking to, is unlike Zapier, unlike Attio, all of those steps that we're talking about in those workflows, they're actually executed by Eigenlayer node operators, right? There's an AVS, and it's the node operators that pick up and run those tasks. And cooler still, each individual task in a flow is run by a different node operator. So the only thing that the individual node operators know about the task is they know the input data, and they know what they're supposed to do, but they don't know what came before it, and they don't know what came after it. So from a securities perspective, for like just people worried about security or front running trades or whatever else, nobody knows anything about what the workflow is trying to accomplish. All they know is their little piece. I'm supposed to take the number 7, I'm supposed to divide it, and then come up with a value, right? Or I'm supposed to monitor the smart contract, pull the data off the smart contract, and send it back to K3. So they know their little piece of the puzzle. They don't know what that data is going to be used for. They don't know what the next transform step is going to be. They don't know if that's for yield pool, farming or whatever. Like all they know is my job is to go and get the data from the smart contract. My job is to write data to the smart contract. They only know their little piece of the puzzle. So really, really excited to be working on the Eigenlayer stack to make that happen, and really love the way that we've done this so that we can take, I think, the maximum advantage of how Eigenlayer works.
On that note, since you just spoke about how K3 is using Eigenlayer, so I have a question around that which I was thinking. But before that, Eigenlayer is a marketplace, right? Let's say restakers gave their restake token to these operators. These operators are the workers of those ABSs, and K3 is an ABS which will need these workers, or we call operators in the Eigen realm, that hey, I want to execute this task, and you you just execute it. Let's say a workflow automation triggered this order for Uniswap, and this will done by an operator if I understand it correctly. So want to know that, like, is it how the thing is working underneath? And also that's my main question is, do we actually need verifiability here in this automation workflow? And if yes, can you explain it a bit, like why we need such a massive restate capital? I think it's more than $2 billion as of now, to secure a protocol or secure these automation services at this moment.
So I have a controversial answer to your second question. No, I don't think I need $2 billion in restate capital. I mean, I don't think that there's enough risk flowing through the system now, certainly not now, maybe not ever, to justify $2 billion. So I'm happy to have it. And I think it's an interesting place to start. That part of the Eigenlayer equation, I think we're all still working through. What is the right amount of security that we all need? What is the best way to reward people for that security? I think it's fair to say we're still all learning together what the right answers to that are. So I'm not going to suggest that any of us really know the answer yet. It's too early. The answer to your question about yes, that is the reality, is that we are operators will be compensated for the volumes that they bring out. Right. Right now we're just giving fixed fees, but we will structure it so that the more jobs that you're picking up, the more compute that you're doing on the system, obviously the more you're earning from as far as compute and as rewards. And it's basically, and our users currently it's free. The system is free to use. Please get started. K3labs.com and start building things right away. But users will eventually have to pay for these compute cycles, because obviously the node operators are doing the work. They need to be paid, right? So they will eventually pay for these compute cycles, and then we're going to be turning around sometime very soon and translating that and giving that back to the node operator. So the more that you're computing, the more that you're picking up, the more jobs that you're working with, the more money you'll be earning on the platform. So that is the workflow. And then yes, the exact amount of staked capital that we need to make that all work relative to the rewards we're paying out, that exact math is something that all of us in the Eigenlayer ecosystem are trying to figure
out. I think based on my observation, I think there are $15 billion in the restate capital which Eigenlayer has secured. There are over 100 AVSs which are building. But I think down the line, as you are customer centric, the correct problem statement which you picked, which many Web3 people forgot, the way we started the conversation, that they build something for the users. I think here our users or our customers are operators also. So we need a flywheel where the AVS earns and they share a profit for the work these operators are providing. I think that needs to be kicked in down the line to make this entire system positive sum for all the stakeholders which are involved.
Yeah, I'm really excited you said that. I can't talk too much about the incentive program just yet because we haven't formalized it, but that is that recursive nature that you mentioned is exactly what we're building in K3. So users are incentivized to use Builders are of workflows are incentivized to build and distribute those workflows. Node operators are incentivized to run those workflows, and we can do all of it with in a non-inflationary way, because there's real work being done, doing real jobs that you would otherwise have to pay a developer to do. And so you can bring new capital into the system and then distribute the capital to all those individuals without having to generate it out of thin air. That's the biggest problem, right? When you can generate out of rewards out of thin air, and they're not, then you can do crazy things that have no basis in reality, because it doesn't matter, because it's just being generated out of thin air. But if you're actually solving real problems, if you're actually letting people automate things that you're giving them real value, things that they would be spending their actual time on, right? Instead of manual, one of our corporate clients, this is a Web2 traditional client, one of our telco clients, is actually using this to top up their wallet, to monitor all of their wallets. They're running wallets on multiple platforms, on multiple blockchains, as a validator for multiple L1s, right? So they have multiple wallets spread all over the place. Instead of using real people to have to go and check all those wallets and give them and build little alerts things, and this wallet's running low, and then I have to go do this, and I have to go to my cold storage and blah, 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 blah. And instead of having to do all that nonsense, they can automate that in the front end of K3. They can put all of their wallets across all of their different protocols and all the different L1s. They can monitor those wallets, and when those wallets drop below a certain level, they can automatically top up with a small little hot wallet that they keep on the system to just make sure that everything's being topped up. That is saving them, a dozen hours a week. Maybe that's an exaggeration. And maybe it saves them 5 hours a week, 6 hours a week, whatever it is. It's real value. So to pay money for that is nothing, because you're getting real value out of it. So then you have that, and you can distribute that to all of the other participants, to the node operators. So you don't have to generate the value out of thin air. You're actually generating you're solving a real problem, and therefore you have real money with which you could use to pay the rewards out. So there'll be more information as we go. I don't want to get too far ahead of it, but it is really, I completely agree with your what you said. If this is not recursive, like if you're not building this in a way where everyone is incentivized properly, you're going to just end up like every other project, and the token will become the product, right? If it goes that route. And that's where we all follow. That's where it all falls apart. And I don't want to deprive people of the fun that involves. And I know that that's interesting and fun, and that's part of crypto. But at the end of the day, that will eventually get boring. It will eventually that's not enough to sustain us. We need to be solving real world problems and really truly saving people time and energy if we really want to see ourselves grow.
Like as I again mentioned, like you are one of the very few devs or few technical person or few Web3 guys who are customer centric, working at a cutting edge tech. Like I've seen people or in Twitter, or I've personally talked most like Solana guys, right? If I name it in direct way, they are very customer focused, because that's the entire chain narrative. Like I think now they have improved on the decentralized quotient also, but initially it was, I think, a few nodes who were running it, and they're all like how to bring customer adaptability. I think that is where these technical projects have lacked, like Ethereum centric and all. And now, as you mentioned, the K3's vision that make more and more people come into Web3 and to do real stuff out there. I think we also need to solve this gap which Eigenlayer ecosystem currently is facing, that economic gap. Like how it will also generate real yield or make a real business model out of this, not to like be rich or something, but just to make the entire ecosystem sustainable, because we can't create value out of thin air and keep on surviving on it. Yeah.
So there's a secret. I have a dirty little secret, which is that if it weren't for Shriram, I might have quit crypto. I was getting very close to quitting crypto because I had spent enough time. I was an advisor for multiple projects. When we succeeded at Curve, we did really well. Again, we sold out to PayPal. PayPal is rolling out all these cool new little crypto things, and part of me is kind of proud because I know that it's my old team that's behind a lot of that. And so like I had gotten to the point I had seen exactly how these networks. I'd seen the bottom line numbers. Like I was an exec at another crypto company, and as an advisor, and I can basically see how expensive it is to run these networks and how much subsidies are required to run that hardware and all of these dedicated networks, and the volume that you would need to do, the amount of fees you would need to charge is so astronomically higher than what people are charging right now in order to run those networks that I just came to the math. And again, I don't want to call out any individual network or say anything negative about a specific project, but it's very clear to me that unless they print new coin, there's no way they're ever going to be able to pay. Like their only way they can survive is to continually print and distribute rewards and subsidize the network. There's just no way that it financially could actually work otherwise. And I almost got out. I was like, well, the math is never there. I mean, yeah, it's fun. It makes a little bit of money here and there, but the reality is that the math will never work out. And then Shriram got on stage, and I can't remember where it was, and I heard him talk about restaking. And this is the only thing that kept me in, because I would not have built this. We would not have built K3 Labs on any other type of tech. Now I know there's more restakings are coming, and we'll definitely, obviously, in transparency, we should be looking at everything. We should be looking at Eigenlayer. We should also be looking at the new ones to see what they're doing too. So I'm not suggesting that you guys are perfect and it's going to be the end all be all, but the idea itself, right? The idea itself, you guys were the first, and there is no way I could have built this on dedicated hardware. My costs would be 10x, at least 10x. I would have run out of money a year ago. It is crazy that every single time you want to build a new network that you should have to do so on dedicated hardware. It'll never work. It will absolutely never work until we engage and realize that shared hardware and shared security is the only way we'll ever get the volumes to a point where we can actually pay for that hardware. Until we all reach that level of knowledge, we're kidding ourselves. And so just a really, really, really huge fan of this concept. Really excited that we were able to get started where we were. And like I said, we would have ran out of money already if we weren't able to take advantage of shared security. So this is what is going to change. So you guys have, I think, really changed the story with respect to the economics of how this can work. And my hope is that our tool set will change the story for broadening the audience. And those, everyone needs to change the story in their own way if they really want the story to change. If all you want to do is generate meme coins and try to make a little money, that's fun too. Again, not, but it's the big sea change events that I think are going to continue to drive us forward.
Very few people, like as he was mentioning, it's a 16 to 17 episode we are recording, and very few people have touched base on the shared security factor. And one thing which I think Shriram himself has harped in a lot, it's a plug and play tool to like have a node operator set. Like the entire Ethereum node operator set is at your service. And the way you explained, I think that actually communicates that it's a 0 to 1 innovation in that angle, at least. Like anybody who's looking for a security, then don't need to bootstrap a network, and that's just available. If you just plug into the Eigenlayer contracts, you are getting it. And I think that is why we are all enthusiastic about Eigenlayer. But yeah, I think that economic problem, and I'm sure that will be solved eventually, like to have a positive sum game for everybody where everybody earns something on that. And moving on to one thing beyond Eigenlayer, that one thing you touched base on, we didn't delve deep that much, that is the LLM or the AI front. If you have seen recently, there are so many AI innovations which are happening across, like be in Web 2, be it Web 3, and with DeepSeek, people are also saying that the cost of hardware, the cost of training models, and the consumers will now come in at scale to use these advanced AI models at large. Since you are in this forefront of this technology, like is K3, I know you just mentioned that there is a thought process, or there is a vision that there will be some amount of LLM model which will be integrated in K3, but is K3 using AI in some capacity? And the second part of the question is, like, if not, like how soon the AI integration we can see in this K3, this LLM kind of thing which is there. Yeah.
So a couple thoughts on that. first of all, we can, as I mentioned before, you can plug into any API that you want to, if you have the credentials for an API, and you can plug into any on-chain permissionless smart contract as well, just by connecting in K3. So we've already played with lots of little bots, because every bot that's out there either has an API interface to it or it has a smart contract interface to it, right? Generally speaking. So you can plug into any of those bots using K3 today. You can run those bots at whatever frequency you want to. You can actually run a specific bot based on a trigger that is generated from an on-chain activity as well. So you can connect in, and we've already played with all kinds of fun little options there. And so that already works today. Yes, you're correct. We're looking at how we can bring some LLM features to our front end, and I think that's a cool way of thinking about it. But as far as scheduling bots, getting the data out of bots and then using that data in downstream processes, that already works today in K3. You simply have to be able to call the bot, get the response. I'm so sorry, I forgot to turn off my phone before joining the call. So that already works. And then I will say this goes back to the point that you brought up before, or we were talking about before, with cost, how expensive it is to run those networks. And if you don't have shared security and a shared system, that it's cost prohibitive. It's that the hardware is, because the competition for the hardware is increasing even more, right? So because of AI, now there's more and more hardware that wants to be used on AI, and there's more and more hardware that needs to be done there. So you have even less capacity to run these networks. It makes shared security even that much more important, right? So and I do think that eventually we'll see some of these LLMs maybe even running on AVSs. Why not? Right? I mean, we could play with that, where we could actually host the bot on our AVS. It's possible. I mean, we've played. I don't know to what extent how much capacity is needed, and whether the compute cycles are really there yet. We can think about and play with all of that. But that's we have an AVS. It's already up and running. We can already run any sort of Rust code on that AVS. And some of these are built in Rust. So there's no reason why we can't be experimenting and trying that as well.
One very important factor here is the devs, right? Obviously, I think you are leading the development of K3, and there will be many such things which will be there. And K3 is a product, in my understanding, and as we discussed also, that non-devs, they need to have technical knowledge, but I'm mentioning non-devs, not non-technical people, can use K3 to build certain things and use those workflows. But let's say if someone wants to build a real Web3 product, and let's say a tech startup out of this, they have an idea, and they have whiteboard it, and they want to make it from 0 to 1. Just want to know where they can start with K3, like both from a documentation perspective, like, okay, this is the places you need to reach out. I've seen there is extensive documentation, but want to know your thought. Even if a dev, I'm not saying non-dev, if somebody has an idea, be it dev or non-dev, they want to build a Web3 product, how K3 can support them at this moment to deploy that thing?
Well, so the most common use cases that we're talking about are people that are interested in workflows, right? So they know that they want to accomplish something very specific. They want a workflow that as I mentioned, that looks at all of their wallets and tops them up, or they want a workflow that sends them an alert every time there's that Bitcoin goes under 100,000, or they want something based on the conditions that are being met somewhere else, right? So those are the most common use cases. It's not full stack applications as much as it is very specific tasks, right? Tasks that they would otherwise have to build themselves, or even wouldn't do, because they can't figure out how to build them themselves, right? The tasks that they would simply ignore. That's the most common thing that people are doing. Now, it is true, you can deploy an application. If you've written it in Rust, you can use our system and deploy a full scale application with front end and hosting and everything. And you can deploy it on our system. I don't think a lot of people are doing that. I could even look to see whether that's even one or two people have even done that yet. But it is possible. It is, and we have full documentation that explains that. So if you are a Rust developer and you do want to say, gee, do I want to deploy this on Versal and run this in AWS, or run this in GCP, or I actually really love the fact that I can run this on Eigenlayer and my cost would be much, much, much lower, you could absolutely do that today. You can go into the system, You can go into our deploy function. You can connect your GitHub. It'll take the Rust code. It'll decompose it into WASM, and it'll run it on Eigenlayer node ops. You'll have your whatever front end you've coded, whatever else will be hosted, and everything will work perfectly. So again, not the most common thing people are doing today, but it is doable. And the reason why it's doable is because that's what we need in order to build our thing, right? So we had to build that first before we could build our own front end, which takes advantage of that in a way. We first had to build the ability to run Rust code on Eigenlayer before we could then build our application to convert Rust code and then have it executed by Eigenlayer, right? So we've taken that one abstraction layer beyond, but both things are possible. And it's really interesting to see how people can combine those things. You can also take, interestingly, if you want, you can load up your own applications as Rust code, your own tiny little functions, and then those will show up as boxes in a workflow, and then you can put those in workflows. So maybe you have a workflow that says, okay, if Bitcoin goes below 100,000 and Ethereum goes above whatever, like if the ratio between Bitcoin and Ethereum is X, then I want to do some fancy rebalancing process that's very unique to me. Fine. You load up your fancy rebalancing process, write it as Rust code, load that up in the system. That becomes a box. And then you can pick that box and have that box executed when those other conditions are met. So you can just focus on your proprietary algorithm, and you don't have to worry about coding all the triggers and all the rest of the things. You can have all that done by the node operators on the Eigenlayer side. So there's a lot of exploration we can do together with your community where they can learn more about. There's just a lot of fun things that I think people are going to start working with, and they'll be incentivized, as I mentioned before, to build more and more creative things and then distribute those things to the broader community as well.
Awesome. I think it can be an endless conversation. I think I really had awesome time chatting with you about like various things. Like I personally thought that okay, it will be a geeky conversation. It will be like 30 minutes, 35 minutes max, and we can just chat about a few like K3 things. Because if you see like K3 is it's an automation tool. It's just automate your workflow. That's it. But the way you shared your insights coming from Web2, being user centric, and that's the highlight. The economical problem of Eigenlayer and the other stuff. It's like I really enjoyed the conversation. One question before we wrap things up is, what's the immediate technical roadmap plan for K3? What we are expected to see in the next two quarters from the K3 team?
So we've been live in production, running on Eigenlayer mainnet as a mainnet ABS since I think October of last year. So we're about 3 or 4 months in. We build new features and deploy them every couple of weeks, constantly cleaning things up based on what people are telling us. I think the big story, maybe I should come back on here and talk about it in 4 or 5 months' time. We'll be rolling out that incentives program this summer. I think we will. It'll be better structured and more clear exactly how users and builders and everyone will be incentivized and be able to and work with the system in a more positive way, and how the node operators are going to be compensated those are the kinds of things that we're working on over the next couple of months. And as people, I think, are building more, they're giving us more feedback, and so we are always just adding more and more features. I mean, we just added Slack integration, I think, last week. So now you can, send all of these messages or things that you can send data into Slack. We had Telegram come in a couple of months before that. I'm sure we're going to add, I think, Google Sheets integration between now and the summer. So you'll be able to read data from Google Elements and write to Google Elements as part of your workflows too. So if you want to pull data from a smart contract and pass it into Google. So like there's other little things that are coming, but the really big story is, how are we going to incentivize our community to continue to build? And there'll be more about that coming in the next couple quarters.
Great. I think great. I think looking forward to all the things which will be coming up. Super thanks for joining in and sharing your journey, sharing what K3 is and about the entire Eigen ecosystem. We'll love to host you again and see what are the updates which are flowing in for K3 and the new possibilities that K3 unlocks. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you, Satyaki.